Hey everybody, are you finding these videos exciting? They're completely blowing my brains. I mean, our last episode was all about the portal, the Stargate, all the fruits that we get from the portal. We go into our portal, communicate with our bridegroom and say, Father, what fruits do I need in this situation? And you behave this fruit instead of behaving what you would want to do in yourself, in your emotions, in who I think I am and what rights I have and how dare you talk to me like this and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All these options that we have, we surrender all of our earthly rights and options and we go into our secret place, in through the portal and speak with Yahushua, and he'll say, just love, joy, peace in this situation, just make peace. Calm everyone down, please. Patience. Have patience here. Have patience. Just be kind. Just be good. Do something nice for them. You know, I give you all these situations and fruits for them. So the most important thing about last episode, apart from the fruit, was dealing with the idea of time. The appointed times, the Moedim. It's something that Yahushua's doing, not us. He brings us into it. He is the master orchestrator of our lives. He is our trainer and he is doing what he's doing in his bride. We can't just rise up and declare who we are, what we're doing, and we've been anointed and we are doing this and we are doing that and we are part of the bride. You know, that is quite arrogant. You don't choose who's in the bride. You choose how you are going to behave. So let's look here. We dealt with the 21 trumpets and plagues. That was an interesting idea, that they correspond. About the global shout blast. And we talked about how all these feasts, Yahushua deals with patterns. He came back the first time, he came onto this earth the first time at all the Moedim, at the appointed times. All within the same year, he died, he resurrected, he ascended, he poured his spirit out. You know, he all on the appointed time. So it's about what he's doing. Why would it be any different when he comes back again? So along that idea of time, I've been looking up a few other things this week which were really fascinating regarding time. And it's going to blow your brains out because it's stuff that we've been saying and it all lines up with what Yahushua's doing. Let's have a look. Time. Remember, Yahushua's doing things in your life. When someone says something to you, when something comes up in your life, you have options. Are you going to take this personally and get angry and fight for your rights? Or are you going to go down, let the person have whatever they're saying? Because if it's not a fruit of the Spirit, it's all evil anyway. It doesn't mean anything. You know, just you've got your armor on, protection. Go in, how am I going to respond to this? And he'll give you a fruit. It's all in his timing. Let's look at time before we go into some really other interesting scriptures. I just want to look at this idea of time a little bit more. The subject of time is one that everyone is familiar with to some extent. While we may share different methods of measuring or quantifying time, one thing is certain. We are all presently subject to time. We all wake up, live our lives and go to sleep. When we then repeat this familiar cycle until we die. Every person lives out a daily cycle and regardless of our waking and sleeping hours, time moves relentlessly forward. Time does not sleep. It is a force that cannot be seen or felt, but it can be measured. In fact, time is actually a physical dimension. So tying in with what we were saying about the time and space. Yahushua set apart time on the Shabbat and he set apart space, which was in the tabernacle, in the most set apart place. It has been described as a great river. This is time. It's been described as a great river that flows and deposits its passengers from one point to another in a single direction. All of mankind is caught in the same current and we are passengers in this river of time that is currently flowing from the beginning to the end. To what end is a mystery to many people. And even though time is not dimensionally restricted, as the water of a river is, being held down by gravity. So time is not dimensionally restricted. It's not held down by gravity. And even though we cannot always see the actual particles of water that are in a current, we can all observe and feel the physical effects of the flow. We can all feel the physical effects of time, can't we? Depending on how far along you are in your life. So we acknowledge this invisible companion and try to understand this relentless reality that we all must contend with, endeavoring to measure it. It's all about time, remember, Yahusha's time, appointed times, 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚, coming to the 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚. We've dealt with this in our last series, but I want to touch on it again. The ancient Hebrew symbols that make up the word 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚 speak of passing through the waters that are held back to see the door of Yahusha's covenant house, forged in a fire of blood and water. So Hebrew symbols, apart from making up a word, each symbol means something in the Hebrew language. This Hebrew symbol and this Hebrew symbol and this Hebrew symbol. So while it makes up a word, it also represents different themes and ideas within that same word. So when you look at this symbol and this symbol and this symbol and this symbol, and we put it together as a summary, it speaks of passing through the water. Who passed through the waters to come to the covenant house? Yisrael passed through the waters of the Red Sea. Passing through the waters that are held back to see the door of Yahusha's covenant house, forged in a fire of blood and water. This special marriage home and interdimensional realm, of which Yahusha is the door, was created for the loving relationship and protection of Yahusha's treasured first fruit bride on this earth, the Garden in Eden. This is all fitting in with everything we've been talking about the last month or so. How it all started in the garden, and we're trying to get back to that same covenant home, loving relationship in the marriage home, the wedding feast, first resurrection, all that. Just as Yisrael passed through the waters on their way to the promised land and were taught how to approach their creator through the tabernacle, Yahusha's bridal people passed through the waters and appointed times as they prepare for the wedding feast and the restored covenant marriage home. They pass through the waters and appointed times. They pass through them. They don't cause them. They don't decide them. They are happening. Time is happening separately to us. Yahusha's appointed times, his 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚, are no different. They are happening whether we like it or not, whether we participate or not, whether we acknowledge it, whether we agree with it. His time, his patterns, the 7-day cycle, the 7-year cycle, the Shemitah cycles, the 50-year Jubilee years, which we're coming into more of that later on, are going on and on and on until the sun goes dark and the moon goes red, and the sky will open up like a scroll, just zip open, and he will come through from his dimension to ours. The portal will be opened again. That's aside from the portal that's in our hearts. Many who are of the Western mindset have learnt to perceive time in a linear sense, i.e. point A to infinity, or infinity past to infinity present. However, we need to broaden our perception to a more ancient Eastern mindset, which understands time as cyclical. The word 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚 does not only involve time though. There's another dimension that must be considered: space. The very idea of an appointment involves being at a set place at a set time. It also involves meeting with someone for a purpose. That's what the whole idea of the 𝗪𝗓𝕡𝕚 is. Not so that we can get involved in these ancient shadows, but to understand that at a certain time, at a certain place, you are going to meet with a certain person. And obviously, the one thing we do at the appointed times that we don't do any other day of the week is meet with fellow believers if there's any around you. If not, it's diff. But the appointed time at the appointed place, you're going to meet with Yahusha and with anybody else who's around. And that's the key. That is the focus of it. Coming in sincerity and in truth, not in having something planned, a word, a message, get a phone call. Oh, I'm going to bring salad. Are you going to bring the drinks? Yeah, I'll bring the meat. Yeah, you can have a conversation about that. That's just planning a meal. But as far as what's going to happen, where two or more are gathered, I'm there. Now, Yahushua will speak. Yahushua will bring up conversations if you are plugged in, communicating the right way. So that's the most important thing about these Moedim. It's something Yahushua is doing, not us. We come into it, and every year is different. That's the fresh thing about it. There's no liturgy. There's no certain scriptures you have to read to get yourself in the solemn mindset of, no. Every year is different. It's an appointed time. There is no liturgy. In the case of the Moedim, at the heart of the word is the idea of a witness or a testimony. Remember that in the ancient symbols, it would mean see the door. So we can equate seeing the door with the witness or the testimony. We will see this notion of the witness and the testimony take on physical form through the Ark of the Blood Covenant witness and the tabernacle, which actually becomes an important focal point of the Moedim. We know that, we've been through all that. They actually become the gateway or door between the heavens and the earth. This isn't me, this is, where's this from? This is Todd Bennett's book, The Appointed Times. So what about this? He's saying things to his people. He's saying things it's written everywhere. I'm finding it everywhere now. I mean, we've been talking about, I hadn't even read this thing. It just came across 2 days ago, I think it was. And it's talking about the portal. That's why I jumped on it. I've got to bring this up straight away. The whole idea, when you look at the symbols of the appointed times, the Moedim, within that word Moedim, it's talking about the man, the first man and his covenant home. And it talks about his nail, and all these things that it talks about, but it's talking about the blood covenant witness and the portal, the doorway between dimensions. Look at it. The singular form of the word is moed, actually means place of assembly. So through the Moedim, we see times where we assemble at a place, times where we assemble at a place. So it makes perfect sense that the appointed times are made to draw people into a blood covenant relationship with the Creator. The main point to understand is that Yahushua is doing everything in his time, his space, through his bride. His time, his space, through his bride. Then we come to an article I saw on Facebook yesterday, which blew me away. Ephesians 1, even as he chose us before the foundation of the world. He chose us before the foundation of the world. You didn't have any say in it. He chose you. He orchestrated your life to bring you to the point where you would either accept him or not. Chose you before the foundation of the world that we should be set apart and blameless before him in love. This behaviour cannot come through the flesh of itself. It must come through the portal by Yahushua into the heart to have power to perform the task. Having previously established us to adoption as sons through Yahushua Mashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his desire. We can't just say we're chosen. We have to manifest his behaviour. We must be selected by Yahushua himself and have a life-changing encounter. We must be selected by Yahushua and have a life-changing encounter. Shaitan gets his followers to challenge everything the word says and declare they've had the same experience. But this is of the flesh and not chosen by Yahushua, who chose his bride before creation to fulfill his plan for family. How magnificent. When we look into this, and you go into all the words and you have a look at it and you see he chose us before the creation. How phenomenal. I saw this on Facebook. This was on Christopher's page yesterday, and phenomenal. It's linking right in with what we're talking about here. How phenomenal is this? The portal, the archway, getting the fruits that we need in our life, understanding that everything is in his time. Even if it's not an official appointed time or a Shabbat day, all day, every day. When Yahushua moves, are you clicking into it? Are you seeing him in every situation? Or are you more interested in your routine and what you're doing and everything else that's an inconvenience? Did it ever occur to you If you put off yourself, these inconveniences might be Yahushua knocking, wanting your attention. To say something, do something, help someone, have a behaviour, serve him in some way, do good. That's why you have to know. You go into the portal and say, maybe I just have to do good in this situation. Be kind, be nice, be gentle, gentleness, kindness. That's why the fruits are so important. And as we discussed last episode, they are warfare. If you're not doing them, are you even in the battle? Are you conscious? That's why you get immersed, apart from being delivered. I mean, the warfare is the deliverance. Yahushua uses the warfare, all the conflicts with everybody around you. He uses that to train you to overcome, to bring you out of the world, sever you from the world. Every person that rejects you in the world, and we all get rejected, particularly at the beginning because we're so excited and we want to tell everybody. All those rejections, all those isolations, kicked out of assemblies, all those sort of things are Yahushua separating you until you get to the point where you realize, okay, zip that and start behaving the fruits. I mean, that's if you want to be useful. I mean, if you just want to be a religious person with a sandwich board, and hats and zits and all these things to throw at people and get in people's faces and mix stuff up just so you can say I had a conversation with someone yesterday about Yahushua and it was good. Yeah, but was it of Yahushua? Did he form it? Did he cause it? Is it his appointed time? Did he do it? Or are you just going out there causing trouble? There's a difference. And then crying when you get hated from persecution. That's not persecution. That's stupidity. Persecution is when you know inside yourself, I didn't do anything in this situation. I'm minding my own business, but I have Yahushua in me and I'm behaving a certain way. And this pressure, this hatred is coming from people. That's how you know that's the anointing of Yahushua. They hated him, they hate you. Not because you've gone out there all flamboyant and gung-ho, to do something of yourself. Because scripture says to do it. Be a witness. You've got to do witnessing. No. Witness is not something that you do. Witness is just something that you are or you're not. The witness is within us. The witness, Yahushua, is the witness. He is on the other side of the portal. He is orchestrating everything in our life. And his message stands outside of time, remember? So it's not about always the ink on the page, quoting scriptures and throwing stuff at people. It's about having a certain behavior. What did he say? About being at a certain time in a certain place, to meet a certain person. Time, space, person, So today I want to go into the set apart oil and bread. Set apart oil and bread. We've just come off the back end of a big spiel of Yahushua explaining the feasts, the Moedim, the appointed times, to Musha again, which was our last episode. And we tied in all those amazing end of times discussions that we're having about the patterns. Yahushua will come back on the feasts, I believe, because he did the first time. Why wouldn't he the second time? He's all about patterns. So let's go. Set apart oil and bread. Yahushua said to Musha, instruct the people of Israel to bring you pure oil of crushed, beaten olives for the light, to keep the lamps burning regularly. Some translations say continually. Some translations say, non-stop, they're never ending, like the lamps had to be burning non-stop. When you look at the actual Hebrew word, it implies more daily or regularly, not continually. That would have been a bit hard, wouldn't it? And also in the scripture, in the verse we're about to come to, it says from evening until morning. So instruct the people of Israel to bring you pure oil of crushed, beaten olives for the light, to keep the lamps burning regularly. The Hebrew word implies daily, not continually. For this is the lampstand, the menorah, that stands in the tabernacle, in front of the inner curtain that shields the ark of the blood covenant witness. And so this ark of the blood covenant was a witness to the blood covenant. It was the outward, physical, visible showing of that there was it was a witness to the blood covenant. That's why we've called it the blood covenant witness, because this whole box, the tablets in it, and other things, was witnessing. It was a visible witness that the blood covenant stood. It was visible. So where is the blood covenant witness now? Where is that ark? Ark is within us. The ark was really the sign that Yahushua was among them. Whenever they'd carry the ark into battle, they knew that Yahushua was with them, his presence, his Shekinah, his power, and he would give them victory. So that visible ark was a sign. Remember when the curtain was rent, the veil was rent at Yahushua's death, there was no ark in there. There was no presence. So the ark represented the presence. So the ark represented the interdimensional portal. That was what it represented. That was the one place on top of the mercy seat, the lid of atonement where Yahushua would meet. The dimensions were connected. The portal was open on the top of the ark. So that ark is now within us. Our hearts are the ark. We are the witness to offer up living sacrifices, ourselves, our behavior. So that is the worship. Can you see that? So I've always hated the word witness, because you've got to go out and do something. You've got to hand out flyers, and you've got to talk to all your clients and friends about Yahushua. You've got to be a witness. I've always hated that word witness until I understood what the word witness meant. It is a witness of the portal within you. How is anybody visibly going to know that there is a portal open on this earth to connect with the Creator? The visible show, the visible witness of such a portal, such a connection, is within us. So it's very important how we behave. And that's why we brought the fruits in. The fruits are your warfare. The fruits are your witness. Those fruits, not the words you say. Words can be religious, particularly if the words can be received as religious, unless Yahushua is actually waking someone up. So it's best not to say anything. You get yourself into trouble. You don't want to get yourself into trouble. You want to be useful to Yahushua. So I know I've gone off on a tangent here, but just the idea of the blood covenant witness, that's within us. Our behavior is the witness. Behavior, 9 fruits, the warfare. How is your behavior? You don't have to do anything. You are it already. Witnessing is not something you do. You are a witness. If the portal has opened within you, Yahushua is slowly but surely transforming your body to represent and be a witness of this portal. The only connection between dimensions on this earth is this portal. That's the witness, guys. So anyway, sorry about that little tangent. So Aaron must keep the lamps burning in my presence from evening until morning. There you go. If it's continually, if the lamps are to be burning continually without ending, why does it say burning in my presence from evening until morning? So there was a time. It had to be daily and it had to be regularly, but not constantly. This is a permanent instruction for you, and it must be observed from generation to generation. Aaron and the priests must daily maintain the lamps on the pure gold lampstand in my presence. So we're talking about light, aren't we? Who's the light? The light of the lampstands. And this part here was phenomenal. I read this somewhere and it was just phenomenal. I have to put this in here. The olive oil. Did you notice up here that the olives had to be crushed? Well, you don't, and beaten. That's not regular. You don't normally have to do that with olives. You might have to squeeze them to get the oil out, but not like this. The olive oil to be used for the menorah had to be crushed, struck, and beaten in order to get the oil out. And Yisrael were probably scratching their heads as to why all this whipping, beating, and scourging of the olives was necessary. Obviously, we look back now and we know that Yahushua the light of the world, was crushed, struck and beaten as the fuel, let's talk about the fuel, to release his phenomenal light into his followers. For physical light to be produced in our universe, there has to be a conversion of matter into energy. Something has to be consumed as fuel in order to produce light. That's the same in most things these days. If you want to run your car, it's got to be fueled by something. Turn your lights on, it's got to be fueled by something. It doesn't just happen of itself. There has to be a conversion of matter into energy. Something has to be used or consumed as fuel in order to produce light. Something has to be consumed in order to produce light. And Yahushua was no different. While on earth, the only way he could produce light was by being consumed. He gave himself totally, surrendering his whole being in order to be the light for a darkened world. Got that? He gave himself totally, surrendering his whole being in order to be the light for a darkened world. We see movies about that all the time now. Something has to go into the reactor, throw something into the reactor, and there's a big boom, and then we've got more energy, you know. We can't just chuck wood and coal in there, we've got to chuck some big special chemical in there, and then the reactor goes boom, and there's lots of energy. We understand this concept in our minds these days. Yahushua had to be consumed. He was consumed and light was produced, you know. The only way that we too can produce light for a dying and dark world is to totally and completely surrender ourselves. Totally and completely surrender ourselves to Yahushua and be utterly consumed up by him for his divine purposes. It doesn't matter how much pure oil is inside us. If that oil isn't lit and eventually consumed, there will be no light. It doesn't matter how much pure oil. What is the oil? Wise and foolish virgins, wise and foolish maidens. What is the light? The light is what is the oil? The oil is his words, his instructions. That's the oil. And how we behave and obey them. That is the oil, that relationship. But it doesn't matter how much pure oil is inside of us. If that oil isn't lit and eventually consumed, there will be no light. Until we convert our resources of belief into obedient action and behavior, there is no light. This is just a mind melt. This is all tying into what we've been discussing. Unless we convert our resources of belief into obedient action and behavior, there is no light. There's no point just being immersed for the sake of it. We get immersed to be empowered, to get a down payment of his Ruach within us, open the portal within us. We can connect, come boldly into the throne room of Yahushua. He trains us through this portal. He chastises us, flogs us, rebukes us, disciplines us through this portal. It's within us. And when we have to go out into the world, we have this behavior, the 9 fruits, which are our warfare. Put our armor on every morning, we have this warfare within us. Why? So that day after day after day, we take a back seat. He starts driving the bus. We take a back seat. We allow him to consume us, just like he was consumed. And we, instead of bringing forth all of ourself, what we want to do and what we want to say and what rights we have and this I, we go down, we shut the hell up, go into the portal and bring forth the fruits of behavior. 9 fruits. This was just phenomenal, the whole idea of Yahushua being consumed. That's why his flesh and his blood are beaten and broken and shed. On that torture stake, his flesh was rent open. 50 days later, his Ruach came into the world. He was consumed. The fire of the wrath of the other dimension of the Father came on top of him. The isolation, curse, the punishment of disobedience came on him. He took it for us, for the joy, so that he could become the light of the world. Well, he's now gone back into the other dimension, and he only lives within us. That's the only connection that a dimension has with this dimension, within us. Isn't this phenomenal, guys? Like, Yahushua is talking to us about our behavior. That's the whole purpose of these scriptures. This new translation is all just to shine a big spotlight on behavior, because if you're not talking and discussing and training in the behavior, it's all cultural, interesting, but useless to you, unless you're looking at what Yahushua's doing with the behavior today in the 21st century. Because the behaviors of the instructions have been transformed. Didn't you know? So that was the light. You must bake 12 flat loaves of bread from choice flour, using 4.4 litres of flour for each loaf. 4.4 litres of flour for each loaf. That's one big ass loaf of bread. They're huge big pieces of loaves of bread. Place the bread before me on the pure gold table and arrange the loaves in 2 stacks, 6 loaves in each stack. 2 stacks with 6 loaves in each stack. The 12 loaves are divided into 2 groups, just as there are 2 stones on the high priest's ephod, on his shoulder bits, with the 12 names of Israel also divided, with 6 names being written on each stone. 6 names on this side, 6 names on this stone. And he's saying, put the bread 6 and 6 as well, 2 piles of 6. Symbolizing the near future that Israel would be split up into 2 houses. Interesting. Then put some frankincense near each stack to serve as a portion of remembrance, a special gift presented to me. And every Shabbat day, this bread must be laid out before me as a gift from Israel, and it's an ongoing expression of the eternal blood covenant of deliverance. The loaves of bread will belong to Aaron and his descendants, who must eat them in a special place, for they are most set apart. It is the permanent right of the priests to claim this portion of the special gifts presented to me. So this had amazing significance to Yahushua and what he was doing. The fact that he was the bread of life, and the fact that the 12 tribes would be split to 2 houses one day, but it also was just simply their food. This was the food for the priests. The loaves of bread will belong to Aaron and his descendants, who must eat them. So they are the most set apart, permanent right of the priest to claim this portion of this. So it's only for the priests. Remember that. It's only for the priests. That's what Yahushua declared. And remember when Yahushua and his followers were plucking grain on the Shabbat? Let's read about that briefly. At that time, Yahushua went through the grain fields on the Shabbat, and his followers were hungry. So they began to pluck heads of grain to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your followers are being disobedient on the Shabbat." But Yahushua said to them, "Haven't you read what Daud and his mates did when they were hungry? And they went into the house of Yahuwah and ate showbread, which was not right for them to eat, but only for the priests? And didn't you read in the Torah that on the Shabbat, the priests in the set-apart place defiled the Shabbat and were blameless? Well, guess what? There's someone right here much greater than the set-apart place. And remember, it was written, I desire compassion and not offering. Obviously, you don't know what that means, or you wouldn't have told off these innocent men. Newsflash, the son of Adam is master of the Shabbat. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Always at these religious folk were always at him. They're just walking along, picking bits off the heads of grain and eating because they were hungry. So Yahushua, it's written here, Yahushua fully admits that yes, technically speaking, Daud and his men did indeed break the law because the showbread was only supposed to be eaten by the priests. However, in giving his approval to what Daud and his men did, Yahushua was actually employing a well-known rabbinic method of debate known as 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝕋, weighing the light versus the heavy. The rabbis and sages always understood that when life and well-being were being threatened, that situation had to be weighed against the strictest interpretation of Torah instructions. So when life was threatened, when life and well-being were threatened, like when your donkey falls down a well, like say a doctor operating on the Shabbat or something like that, something that's life and death. If you need to run to the emergency room if there's an emergency, great. That's what Yahushua's pointing to here when he's talking. This was the point Yahushua was making, and in no way does it mean that the everlasting instructions are now null and void, as many would say. Saying that Yahushua's done away with the Shabbat, and he's the Shabbat and we don't have to do it. No, he's just having a go at him and referring to this 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝕋, weighing the light versus the heavy. When life and well-being were being threatened, you had to reassess the situation. Work out which was most important, the life or death situation or the instruction, and weigh up the severity of the situation. So that was the point Yahushua was making. Yahushua was pointing out the inconsistency in the thinking of his critics by asking them if they had no problems with David feeding men who were hungry using sacred bread, then why should they have a problem with his hungry followers plucking heads on the grain to eat on the Shabbat day as well? Once again, Yahushua is drawing from the patterns laid out here in Leviticus and exposing the evil leavened behaviour of the religious Pharisees. About that. So, that was about the bread, guys. And we come to an example of punishment, just punishment. One day a man who had a Yisraelite mother and an Egyptian father came out of his tent and got into a fisticuff with one of the Israelite men. And during the fight, he blasphemed the name of Yahuwah with a curse. And when you look up the word blasphemed in the Hebrew, it means to pierce. Stab, pierce. So he blasphemed the name of Yahuwah. He's actually piercing the name of Yahuwah with a curse. So the man was brought to Musha for judgment. His mother was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri, of the tribe of Dan. Always Dan getting into trouble. Dan's always getting into trouble. Dan were one of the first tribes to be kicked out as well. Or they chose to be kicked out and lived on their own when they got to the land. And just did all these abominable worship practices. Proudly in Yahushua's face. Good old Dan. Pattern of behaviour here in Dan. So they were from the tribe of Dan. They kept the man in custody until Yahushua's will in the matter should become clear to them. So Yahushua said to Musha, "Take the blasphemer outside the camp and tell all those who heard the curse to lay their hands on his head. Then let the entire community stone him to death and say to the people of Israel, those who blaspheme, pierce the name of Yahuwah will be punished for their behaviour and stoned to death by the whole community of Israel. Any native-born Israelite or foreigner among you who blasphemes the name of Yahuwah must be put to death." So remember, there's a whole mixed multitude and a whole different cultural, blended families and all sorts of things. People who are Egyptian, people who are all sorts of nationalities coming out with them. So he's saying to all of them, anyone who blasphemes the name, no matter who you are, where you come from, you're dead. You're piercing my name. And remember, back then it wasn't just, oh, that's just a word, just words. Words meant something. Words had power. Words were sowing seeds. And if you were blaspheming, cursing someone's name, particularly the creator of the universe, you're literally piercing him because his name is his identity. His identity is his name. You know, got it? It's all wrapped up together. That's why at the end of sentences you just go, why? Because I'm Yahuwah. My stamp of authority, seal of authority, is my name. We don't have that same weight and importance on names these days. People just change their names willy-nilly. But back here, names were powerful. An identity of who the person was. Why do you think none of the Bibles now have Yahushua's name in it? Because the enemy doesn't want his power to come through. The healing, the deliverance is in his name. So you pierce my name, you dead. So in Leviticus, there was neither earthly forgiveness nor some kind of, this is talking about the putting their hands on his head. The whole idea of his blood being on his own head, you know. And that says up there, they lay their hands on his head. Those who heard the curse to lay their hands on his head. Well, what did that mean? Remember they used to lay their hands on the head of the animals to put the disobedience onto the animal and then slaughter it? Well, in Leviticus, there was neither earthly forgiveness nor any kind of substitutionary sacrifice available for the one who blasphemed Yahushua's name. And according to the words of Yahushua himself, there's no forgiveness nor substitutionary atonement available for the person who blasphemes the set-apart spirit, turning our backs on him and walking away. So many people have looked at the scriptures, oh, his blood will be on his own head, it's his fault, and that's all real heavy things. No, that wasn't what that phrase meant. His blood will be on his own head. Blood will be on, it's his fault. No, it's all judgy and all that. No, it just meant that there was no sacrifice available for you. Because when you did something wrong, you would either know, or you would go to the priest and say, I've done this and this. What sacrifice should I offer up? In the case of blasphemy, blaspheming Yahushua's name, there was no sacrifice available. So there was neither earthly forgiveness nor some kind of substitutionary sacrifice available for the one who blasphemed Yahushua's name. Cut off, physical and spiritual existence severed. And remember, we're told in the latter scriptures by the emissaries that there is no forgiveness for anyone who blasphemes the set-apart spirit. Always wonder you could be forgiven for anything except blasphemy against the set-apart spirit. Well, that's Yahushua's spirit. So what does that mean? Just like there was no forgiveness or sacrifice available for blaspheming Yahushua's name, it's really the same thing. His name is his being, is his spirit, it's all wrapped up in one. So there's no forgiveness nor sacrifice or atonement available for the person who blasphemes the set-apart spirit. And how do you blaspheme the set-apart spirit today? How could you blaspheme it? None of us would. So how would you? You would turn your backs on him and walk away. That's what I believe. That's what I'm feeling the only way you could be lose your deliverance, walk away, because I know who Yahushua is. He'll forgive you for anything, won't he? That's who he is. He'll forgive you. Come, if you repent, he forgives you. But if you turn your back on him and walk away, it's a whole different story. So, also, anyone who takes another person's life must be put to death, and anyone who kills another person's animal must pay for it in full. A live animal for the animal that was killed. Anyone who injures another person must be dealt with accordingly to the injury inflicted. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever anyone does to injure another person must be paid back in kind. This same standard applies to both native-born Israelites and to the foreigners living among you. For I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. These verses are Hebrew idioms calling for proportional punishment, not to be taken literally. You don't have to... if somebody injured your eye, you don't necessarily have to go and gouge out their eye. If you have a fisticuff and your tooth gets knocked out, you don't have to punch the other guy's tooth out. That's not what he's saying. They're Hebrew idioms calling for proportional punishment, not to be taken literally. The idea is that the punishment should not be greater than the crime. Monetary compensation was always preferred over physical punishment. And actually physical mutilation was looked down on and discussed. A fair price is to be paid as retribution for criminal activity. So a fair price is to be paid. So that's what the eye for eye, tooth for tooth things mean. It's the idioms. Got that? Idiom? After Moshe gave all these instructions to the Israelites, they took the blasphemer outside the camp and stoned him to death with stones. Stoned him with stones, just as Yahushua had instructed Moshe. Then we come to the Shabbat here. We're going to finish on this, guys. While Moshe was on Mount Sinai, Yahushua said to him, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you have entered the land that I'm giving you, which is not an outright transfer of ownership, as though the thing being given to you is completely yours to do with whatever you want. The land was set apart or assigned to Yahusha. That's the whole idea in this Hebrew mindset. You didn't own it. It was yours, but it was more like a lease, or not a rental, but it was still Yahusha's. What does it say to us today? Nothing you have is yours, even if you paid for it with your own hard-earned money. It's not yours. Who gave you the money? Everything in the world is Yahusha's. He giveth, he taketh away. So everything in our lives is his. How do we treat it? How do we look after it? How do we feel about it? Are we content? Or are we wanting more? You know? All interesting seed thoughts, yeah? So when you have entered the land I'm giving you, the land itself must observe a Shabbat rest before me every 7th year. For 6 years you must plant your fields and prune your vineyards and harvest your crops. But during the 7th year, the land must have a Shabbat year of complete rest. It is my Shabbat. It's his earth, his Shabbat. Rest my earth every 7th year. Do not plant your fields or prune your vineyards during that year. And don't store away the crops that grow on their own or gather the grapes from your unpruned vines. The land must have a year of complete rest. But you may eat whatever the land produces on its own during its Shabbat. This applies to you, your male and female servants, hired workers, temporary residents who live with you. Your livestock and wild animals in your land will also be allowed to eat what the land produces. So, then we go into the Jubilee. We'll do that next episode. But it's phenomenal, isn't it, guys? I mean, look, I'm just blown away. Like, I can't plan any of this. I mean, I'm reworking the scriptures now because initially I was putting the whole book out and then studying it on video with you guys. But I'm seeing now that there's articles popping up left, right, and center. People are saying things. Yahusha shows me articles, even old ones that are related to this. And I think, yeah, it's good to know where we're going, but I'm reworking it now and adding it all together and going with you on this because Yahusha's doing everything. Even me just having a plan, it all goes out of whack, it doesn't work properly. Yahusha is the one orchestrating all this. I mean, look at it. We started with the portal. We've been talking about the portal for years. I never used the word portal though. It was always a dimensional, thing. It's just something we understood. We couldn't really explain, but we know it now. Dimensions. It's phenomenal, isn't it? Love all that sci-fi stuff. Well, this is where it all comes from, Yahusha. We get our behavior through that dimension, through that portal. And now we're coming into the light. The light cannot happen unless we are consumed, unless we surrender. Bringing in this idea of surrendering again too. We dealt with that in the wilderness. Are we willing to surrender? Or are you too important for that? Are what you want and what you feel and the lusts of the flesh and the lusts of the eyes and the pride of life, are all those things too important for you? Because Yahusha says, give up your life. Surrender it. And why? Because we saw just as he gave up his life to produce the light. He was the light. See the significance of the menorah? How many menorahs were there in the book of Revelation? The 7 lampstands, 7 assemblies. The whole idea, it's all coming together, the whole idea of time and space and light and bread and surrendering ourselves, behaving the fruits. It's phenomenal, guys. There's nothing more I can say about it right now apart from rambling on. It's phenomenal. Keep going. Go into your secret place whenever you feel trouble, whenever you have a situation that presents itself in front of you. It's generally like this, isn't it? How are you going to respond? You're going to rise up in like kind? We're going to go in and go to your master, go to your bridegroom, come back with loving behavior to this situation. Come back with the fruits of right behavior. So I just finished this video and walked back out into the salon and I looked at Facebook and I saw this amazing article put up only minutes ago, and it's completely tying into what I've just recorded. It's actually bringing more life to it. So I want to go through it with you before we actually leave this video. called food behavior. I'll put it up behind me. Because we're talking about the bread, talking about Yahushua picking the grain and eating it, and what the Pharisees are saying, and it's all about behavior, of course. So let's go into this. Food behavior. Our food is the word of Yahuwah. Did you know that? Your food is Yahushua. His word is your food. If we're not eating it daily, our arteries will block up and cause heart failure. No sustenance, no power of life. If you are not partaking of the divine food, you will be a weak and insipid version of what you were created to be. This can be seen through a person's behavior. What they're feeding on is obvious through their behavior. There is no way a person can have access to understanding the Torah without the indwelling of the Ruach. Those who understand have gone into the door of obedience, have passed the test, and are in touch with the Master's voice, and are behaving the Torah of eternal life. They've gone in there, they've done it, passing the tests. Life without the presence of the Ruach is just heading towards our own destruction. We can actually see and feel it happening. We will be filled with all sorts of torments that will kill us. All the ailments a person suffers come from the food they consume in their vessel. Only one food is life-giving, and that's Torah. Food from the worldly teaching sows death, and how much of that do we have to wade through at times to find the gems? There's so much worldly, deathly teaching and opinions and philosophies out there, isn't there? If someone has access to the portal and is guided by the Ruach, it will be obvious in their behavior. If someone has access to the portal and is guided by the Ruach, it will be obvious in their behavior. Likewise, the greed of the world's wisdom and knowledge will be prevalent. So it's obvious when you can see someone in that behavior as well. It's obvious. Men and women in the bride of Yahushua can see the signs of the world's behavior all around them. They can also see the signs of prophecy in the environment and understand just what that means. That's brilliant. Yahushua said, "Don't throw your pearls before swine." Even though he loves everyone, there are those who will never change. It is up to the believer to be sensitive to his and her surroundings and to be conscious of swine behavior, for pigs are also not food. Samaritan behavior is the way to walk, not in crowds so much. So what about what we're talking about with the witness, the light and the witness and what's within us, the portal? And now look at this. See, Yahushua is speaking to his bride all over the world. He doesn't need the internet. He doesn't need Facebook and YouTube. He speaks to he did it back in the early assemblies. He spoke to somebody, you go there and you do this and you do that. Actually, that's going to take too long. Here, look, zip, zip, and he put them there himself. Supernaturally transported them from place to place. He did it all himself. He doesn't move the same way these days because we have a lot of those facilities ourselves. He doesn't speak in multiple languages and tongues these days through people either with the indwelling, because we have apps that can do that. You know, this was a tool that he used back then to spread his word into the world. So what about this? We're talking about, should we witness or should we go out and say, and what about this? Yahushua said, "Don't throw your pearls before swine." Remember, we were talking about there's only two groups of people on this earth, clean and unclean. Yisrael, those immersed, and unclean, the world, the goyim. So don't throw your pearls before swine. Swine are unclean. Everybody out there is unclean. Should you be throwing the precious, treasured, amazing gems that Yahushua gives you that are precious to you, like these articles that I see on Facebook, things I'm putting out, things that all the people in the bride are putting out, people just skim past them. It's nothing. It's just another rubbish religious thing, they probably think. But to us, it's treasure. It's like gems. It's gold and silver to us. And what does Yahushua say? Don't throw that stuff to swine. You know? Even though he loves everybody, does he? Does he really love everybody? Or does he love his bride? Interesting to think about that one. Does he tell us to go and love the world? Does he tell us to love But does he love the world? Or does he love his bride? Who did he come for? Yeah? Anybody who wants to be delivered has to graft into the bride, graft into Yeshua. Even though he loves everyone, there are those who will never change. It is up to the believer to be sensitive to his or her surroundings. This is where it becomes personal. Should I do this? Should I do that? Am I going out there with religious behaviour? Am I going out there with behaviour that is an eyesore? Just like the religions do? Even though you're not religious because you're preaching Yahusha, should you be going out there with that kind of behaviour? It's all about behaviour, you see. Obviously, your message is going to be different to every other religion because you've got Yahusha, but how is your behaviour? Look at this. It is up to the believer to be sensitive to his and her surroundings and to be conscious of swine behaviour. For pigs are also not food. Samaritan behaviour is the way to walk, not in crowds. To those of it's taken a while to come out of that mindset, mentality. Even coming out of Christianity into Messianics and 𝐻𝕕𝕚, I still wanted this whole crowd. We're going to affect the world. We're going to be a global sensation. I'm going to make it happen. And me, I, all this stuff I thought. And year after year, Yahusha breaks all those things away, strips all those things back. And eventually you realize, even talking to one person, you have no control over the conversation. You can't reach in there and switch a lever that makes them understand how precious this message is. And certainly writing it on a shirt isn't going to help, or whatever weird things people do, sticking it on the back of their bus. Oh no, who's this person? I run from those sort of people, even if it had Yahushua on it, which I never see in this country. But that behaviour shows me they're trying to be something and do something, and that's not leaving it to Yahusha. That's not allowing him to move in your day. You're ready, willing. If somebody asks, if somebody genuinely asks you and needs Yahusha and this, that in their day, how many are there? You're ready. But you don't go out there making it happen. Put your head down, your bum up, shut your mouth, live a quiet life, mind your business and be obedient and get ready for the wedding feast. And if Yahusha says to you, I want you to bring these few people with you to the wedding feast, that's his business and he'll let you know. Yeah? So I just thought this article was phenomenal about what we feed ourselves with. If you're not feeding on the Torah, it shows in your behaviour. So stay strong, brothers and sisters, and realise that Yahusha is orchestrating everything in your day. Are you missing him? Are you seeing what he's doing? Every situation. Are you going into the portal? Are you living that reality? Going in, coming out, going in, coming out with goodies for those around you. And their behaviours, of course. You can be living this life completely secretive and incognito, but people will still know there's something different about you. But it's up to you to be sensitive to your surroundings as to when you reveal that. Because if they're not ready or if they're not called, you're wasting your time. Is it hard for you to accept that your friends and family aren't called? Are you having a hard time with that? Yes, that's sad. But look at Noach. Look at multiple people in the scriptures. Look at the tribe of Lewi. They were called to go and slaughter their whole families and everybody for worshipping the golden calf. And they honoured Yahusha's instruction. They were chosen to be the most elite, set apart people on the planet because they chose him over their families. We don't have to hate our families. We just have to choose Yahusha over them and understand that maybe they're not called. You can pray and communicate and ask Yahusha to open their eyes, but if you try and make it happen, you're just in for a world of pain. You're best to give them over to Yahusha and let him bash them around. He will, but if you get in the way, you get battered around and they see nothing. So you just let them have who they are and ask Yahusha to move in the situation, not you. Aren't you sick of you? Aren't you sick of looking in the mirror and going, oh, yep, that's me? So to get rid of the I and get rid of the you in the situation. It's time to die. Remember we talked about the oil and the light. You've got to be consumed. You've got to die if you want any kind of light. If you want any kind of effect, light, life, power, food, everything from the portal to come out of you, you've got to get out of the way and die. You need to die.